Hello everyone and welcome to another sim racing video. But so far you've been very much enjoying these, so why not? And today we'll be doing actually something different. Namely, I will be driving on iRacing in the wet. Why is it special? Because so far most of my content is filmed or was filmed on Assetto Corsa or the other equivalents of it. And for some reason, iRacing not really. But reality is, I have to admit, I am using iRacing's wet model to prepare myself for wet races in general. And when I know that it will be a wet race, I definitely hop on the simulator to get my muscle memory going when it comes to wet driving. Now, for people who follow my content for a bit of time, know that I am better than average when it comes to wet driving. Last year's 24-hour race, for example, at night in the wet, there was lots of action, close calls, and I managed to put the car on P1 in my night stint. So I can tell you that it's actually very good to use sim to prepare yourself for real world driving. Now, driving the Nürburgring is challenging enough on its own, let alone in the wet. This is why it's good to be well prepared and secured. And while we're speaking about preparations and security, let me tell you more about Surfshark, the service that I use to keep myself secured and also fast while I'll browse the web. There are multiple advantages that it offers to you. First of all, you can avoid price discriminations. If you use VPN and will say that you're actually accessing the service from another country, you might be able to get it cheaper. Or when it comes to content like streaming services, some content is available in one country but not available in another, or has versions completely altered with different subtitles, audio, and you name it. So using VPN can actually give you a lot of extra. And finally, of course, your data protection. You can browse the web, or you can have the streams, or if you run a big engineering company, for example, like Vulcan Alpha, you want to protect your designs. So it is very handy. In addition, Surfshark has also many other benefits, such as, believe it or not, unlimited devices. So you can have one subscription and add pretty much your whole household to it, and you are going to be safe. 24-hour service and much more. And as of now, since we have Black Friday deals, if you go to surfshark.com/Misha, you get 4 additional months for free, and you get also 30 days trial guarantee. So if you don't like it, you just cancel it and no problem whatsoever. Anyway, let's do some driving now. As mentioned, we'll be going on iRacing. So you see that I already have my BMW M4 G82 GT4 Evo that we'll be driving. So same car that we've been driving for the last 2 years with Jimmy Broadbent, Steve Alvarez Brown, Super GT, Emmanuel Metzger. Speaking of Jimmy Broadbent, a quick reminder what we will be using. Moza gear that Jimmy has been using a lot. So actually a quick insert from the previous video in case you missed it that highlights all the important features. We have here Moza R25 Ultra True Torque wheelbase direct drive. Now the number, just like in the case of cars in the past that would suggest the horsepower number, in this case it actually tells you the maximum torque output, which is 25 Newton meter. Enough to snap your wrists, but it also actually has a very intelligent feature inside. When you crash, usually you need to let go of the steering wheel or it will snap you. Actually, it senses that you have crashed and it will reduce all the output, and well, it's good for the beginning drivers and it will save you. In addition, it has industry-leading highest torque density motor, and therefore the base is actually very compact. It's very short in comparison to other very long bases. Could be very good if you want to have some space management. It's CNC machined, it has some fancy RGBs, it came with a very nice Moza Racing steering wheel, the GSV2, where we can change mapping, traction control, differential, ABS settings, flashing, and it's also made of nice forged carbon fiber, so it looks very good too. Moreover, I have also got an M booster pedal, which is active brake pedal from Moza. You can also use it as a accelerator pedal or a clutch pedal, but in this case as brake, because it can simulate when you press ABS. Not only that, you can map it completely to your liking, so it comes very handy if you want to simulate a real car or like real life race car scenarios. And alternatively, if you're driving some old shitbox, you can actually have very long pedal travel with very little feedback, but this is yeah, not proper race car stuff. Back to today's setup. So we have GT4, we'll be driving just a Nürburgring Nordschleife without a GP, but more importantly, we will be driving in the wet. And having said that, we will be driving in heavy wet conditions, because if you go very heavy, you're basically aquaplaning everywhere. It is impossible to drive. So without any further ado, let's start test driving. Right, so the things that you need to know as the driver when it comes to driving the Nürburgring. The Nordschleife is one of the most occupied or used pieces of tarmac in the world, because you have cars racing, going on public sessions, industry pool testing, you name it, and they leave a trail of rubber on the tarmac. Makes it extra grippy in the dry and extremely slippery like ice in the wet. Now, what iRacing does actually very nicely is it creates puddles on the ideal line, on the dry line, so you actually need to avoid it. So it simulates very nicely. Furthermore, what I want to tell you is that the general rule of the thumb that was taught to me by my dear friend Ice Cold Moritz. Speaking of ice cold, we have new Nürburgring Christmas sweater. Check out the link in the video description. Also nürburgring.com, which is my website for all the Nürburgring licensed merch. Ice Cold Moritz has taught me how to drive in the wet, most importantly, slow feet, fast hands. So be very gentle with your throttle and gas inputs, because this will unsettle the car. Either make you oversteer by losing the grip in the rear, or if you go too much on the brakes, it will make you slide forward if you have no ABS, or maybe if you do have ABS, you will not be able to transition the weight, and you need to be able to control the steering as quick as possible. Now let's change our traction control settings. We are gonna go in pretty much in off. This is going to be a very extreme application. Now when we drive in real life, usually we leave, if it's heavy wet or if we're in the slick on the slicks and it is raining, we leave the traction control either in MDM completely or actually on quite on a higher level, like 8, 10. Pedal, you can change the way your pedal reacts your throttle input to wet, so it's even more modular. But since I've been used to the car so much, I actually like to drive with linear, and the last race that we have won in the wet on slicks, full slicks, not wet slicks, I was also driving just in a linear, because I just know how it feels, how it reacts, etc. The final thing, what makes it extra tricky to drive on the wet, the last piece of theory before we start driving, is that you have a very fine balance between oversteer and understeer. So in essence, most of the time the car will understeer because the front tires have less grip, but then if they get grip or if they get too much resistance on the, well, due to the friction of the puddles, you might end up all of a sudden losing the rear, because it, even though you have the same throttle application, because the car gets pushed through the puddle, it may lose traction. All right, let's proceed. So I will be doing the general, we have lots of wheel spin. I'll be doing the general guide in slow and give you some tips and tricks. So as mentioned previously, you need to avoid not looking where you're going and looking on the camera at the same time. You need to avoid the dry line. Therefore, the rule of the thumb is to stay on the outside of the corners. So you stay on the outside, for example, here through Hatzenbach. Very important to stay on the outside of the line. You can see also now you have the puddles on the ideal line, and be very gentle with throttle application and brakes. Here's a bit of a tricky one. You can actually use this curb on the right that in real life has a bit of more proper curbing. The same story here. You could go on the curb, but I suggest to actually avoid it. You end up on the outside and go on the gas. Important thing is to actually also break off the ideal line. So here we take the dry, we go also here again where it is dry, and we go on the gas. Pretty much flat, just watching out that the car will not lose traction all of a sudden through a puddle on high speed. I like to be a bit on the middle here for the braking zone, and you're going to the outside where we see more grip, staying out, gently on the gas. And here also in real life we have a lots of puddle forming, so you can see that the car is losing grip actually. Whoop, 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 yeah. And hereby also big shout out to Moza, to the direct drive system, because I have a very nice feeling what the front axle and also rear axle is doing. So that works very nicely. Here Jimmy had a very sketchy moment last NLS race. So yeah, staying on the outside because that's where the grip is and less water, and on the gas. Now Foxhole is very tricky because here you have actually straight, but you have all kind of nasty bumps. So here, for example, you heard loss of traction because the car went a bit in the air, and that gets tricky because for rear-wheel driven cars, when you lose traction because the rear axle gets lifted, you're gonna end up actually oversteering completely. On the now forced, very gentle, very slow, again using outside and gently on the gas, especially here because the dry line is crossing your exit and you might lose traction there as well. Be gentle through here, going to the outside through Metzgersfeld, avoid the inside, off the gas, transitioning to the left so you can go on the brakes, off the dry line. Gentle here because here's a lots of Kalahart. Also very important to go early on the brakes because it's a very steep downhill section and the gravity will pull you down while you are going on the brakes, so your braking distance will be much longer than it would be otherwise. Here miss hit miss is actually miss. You want to stay on the outside on the gas and position yourself for the middle of the track so you can go on the brake. You can probably hear the vibrations because that's the active pedal of Moza simulating the fact that the ABS is kicking in off the car. Why is it important? Because once ABS is kicking in, it is having the same kind of brake force applying to avoid to wheels to lock up. But in reality, you might be able to actually put even more braking force to it if you do not go into the locking point of the wheels. Hope it kind of makes sense. Maybe I should explain it some other time. Anyway, proceeding here, also brake off the line to the outside. You see also quite a dry line here because it's lots of camber here and all the water is going down, and flat on the gas. This is a tricky part because essentially you can take it pretty much flat, but you need to watch out for understeering effect, and also, as mentioned in the short theory introduction, for slight oversteering effect when your front tires get too much friction and send your rear axle to the outside world. Alright, going to mud curve. Also tricky, watch out here for the bumps and jumps. We are going on the brakes. Stay on the outside, off the dry line, and off we go. So here on the left, you usually have two overhanging trees. You could take the outside line, but this year actually they resurfaced the tarmac. Advantage of wet tires, you can take the grass, not too much, but technically it's easier than on full slicks. With the resurfaced tarmac, you actually do not have the wetness, what you call it. Go on the brakes here on the inside. You see, actually nothing crazy that we were doing, but because of the elevation changes of the carousel, we lost a lot of grip and we spun out. What I was saying is that resurfaced sections of the track where you have new tarmac they have actually ideal grip on ideal line. So if you know which sections are those, you can actually gain a lot of time through there. So hole 8, staying out, out, out. I like to be a bit more on the middle for the wet line braking, transitioning to the outside, and then going to Hedvig's Höhe. Find the piece, going through the outside, to be calm with all the inputs, staying on the outside, 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 outside. Same here, you could take the curb, but I prefer to be on the outside, transitioning to the middle and go to the outside where you see also the dry patches. At least I hope you see them. Here, a very steep downhill part where the gravity will pull you down, so go earlier on the brakes than you usually would do. And you're just going from outside to the outside, and especially here, the transition to the old tarmac, going to the outside. As of this year, this section has been resurfaced, so you can, this year, next year, probably as well, take the dry line through ice curve. Be gentle through here, especially on the curb. This one I would avoid because there's too many elevation changes happening. Be gentle through here because that can end up very badly. Oh no, we cut the course, so we need to be extra slow. And yeah, this section is also brand new this year, so it should be straightforward and easy. Good. Just be very gentle because lots of elevation changes are happening. And yeah, lots of standing water. All right, braking off the line over here to the outside, being very gentle, almost off the throttle. Just be stable. Same here, staying out, off the gas, not too much. Here you go to the inside to avoid the dry line under braking. And I like to stay a bit on the uphill of the carousel for the same reason, because there is less rubber. Middle of the track and braking straight to the outside. Positioning ourselves, staying on the outside throughout the corner, avoiding the dry line, out, 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 out. Gentle with throttle application, especially here. You really want to wait because the car might just really step out. Now, on the straight, the main thing, you just need to monitor the puddles ahead of you, because I have been doing 280 kilometers, 270, 280 on the straight in the wet. It's just like you need to see if there's a puddle, you want to avoid that or at least reduce your throttle application. If you can take usually this section flat, now you would go off the gas a bit and be cautious. All right, we're almost at the end. Didn't go too bad. So what I will do now, I will probably do one more lap without talking, so you can actually stick around, maybe watch that. And if not, then I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a thing or two. Don't do this. Always make sure your car is loaded. And my issue was I was off the brakes. All right, I guess that's kind of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I should go back to my wife and kids. Yeah, but I have a very long week ahead. Actually, I'm gonna be in Nottingham Park in like 8 hours from now, including the flight. So let's go take a nap. Hope you guys enjoyed and see you next time. Bye bye.